So I turn my video off now again. What's the plan?
Shall I?
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back for the first of our workshop sessions at the Energy Storage Summit. So I'm really excited to begin this one. This first workshop is all around whether the UK is ready for solar plus storage. So I think a very, very important question in light of everything in the market at the moment and some of the market predictions. So this will be hosted by our Diamond and Technology sponsor, TrinaStorage. So the way that the session will run, we have 45 minutes for the session. We're going to share a video for you. Then Dr. Jan Schoene and Daniel Greten will share some slides with you. And then we'll move on to a bit of a roundtable discussion with some market participants as well. So everybody listening and in the audience, we do encourage you to put your questions in the chat box and we'll go to them during the discussion. So now, Tanushree, over to you and we can start the video.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session. I'm Tanushree Mukherjee, Marketing Manager, TrinaStorage. I'm also joined by Daniel Greten, Head of Sales, and Jan Schoene, Head of Product from the team. In the next 45 minutes, we will explore the topic, is the UK ready for solar plus storage? While we will be active contributors to this session, we will also have very interesting guest speakers lined up and looking forward to some key takeaways from the discussions. So stay tuned for all the action until the end. So far, we have seen that solar plus storage is one of the most prominent storage applications in the US already, and the trend is also catching up within the UK market. Being on the supply side of the business, we have been receiving a lot of interest for solar plus storage projects across UK. So to kickstart the workshop, we'd like to play our solutions video for you, and we really hope that you find it informative. Then I will hand over time to Daniel and Jan to take you through some insights on the topic. So shall we have the video now?
Our world of energy is changing. As governments and organisations unite to tackle climate change, renewable energy has taken centre stage. However, renewable energy integration at scale comes with some challenges. A higher share of variable renewable energy increases system requirements for balancing supply and demand. Energy storage is the answer to these challenges and can help energy producers, suppliers, and distributors alike. But the energy storage solution of choice has to feature high industry standards in terms of safety, reliability, cost-effectiveness, service and sustainability, combined with strong technical and market expertise. That is why we are launching TrinaStorage, a global energy storage system provider committed to transforming how we deliver energy. Trina combines in-depth technological expertise and the agility to overcome today's complex renewable energy challenges. Producers of renewable energy often find that their power output doesn't meet the power demand. Renewable intermittent power generation can be either too high or too low, depending on weather conditions and the time of day. This forces them to either sell the excess power or buy the additional power needed. TrinaStorage helps here. We combine our energy storage systems with smart energy management and control systems to maximize system performance and economics. Our solutions are flexible and highly scalable depending on customer requirements. They are ideal for different application scenarios, such as solar plus storage or standalone battery systems to enhance grid stability. With an experienced team, TrinaStorage provides great support during the system design process and project fulfillment. We also offer a highly advanced SCADA system to closely track system performance. Trina relies on a strong supply chain and only uses Tier 1 components to deliver the best solution possible. We strongly focus on quality, safety and service, from production to commissioning and over the entire product lifecycle. We guarantee reliable quality, performance management and availability control. Indoors or outdoors, independent of climate and weather conditions, TrinaStorage will build the optimal solution for your energy needs. With over 20 years of experience and innovation in the renewable energy industry, we are ready to drive customer success and the renewable energy revolution.
Great, thank you. Now we will move on to Daniel's presentation.
Okay, thanks Tanushree, and thanks everybody for joining today's session. I think with TrinaStorage is basically a global player, so we're present around the globe. We see what's happening in the different markets, and specifically renewable integration, mainly solar plus storage, is I think the key application when it comes to larger battery storage projects. I think we see roughly 65% share at the moment, with an increasing trend. Unfortunately, in Europe, that's still not the situation. So specifically, larger batteries standalone is what is currently dominating. But we see, as Tanushree already mentioned, a dramatically increased amount of requests for solar plus storage projects. And not only in Europe, but specifically, actually, UK is quite active there. So hence, I'm very happy that we have today's roundtable and discussion. So I think that said, there's a key difference between, for example, the US market and the UK/other European markets when it comes to co-location. So in US, we typically see relatively simple PPA models with a clear kind of requirement for the storage system, for example, 4 hours. So there's limited complexity in this and limited room for optimization. In the UK, it's quite different. So I think we have a much merchant model there. So it's really key to maximize the value of your grid connection and other fixed costs. But the level of complexity is also much higher. So we have a number of different revenue streams that needs to be managed. And at the beginning, you don't really know if it's going to be an AC coupled or a DC coupled system, how big it's going to be. You really need to look into the product specific in order to optimize. So there's not one recipe. The good news is that technology is there to support both, so whether EC or DC coupled, and let's say on the software side as well, to enable different revenue streams and applications. So I think that's something that we feel quite confident about. Now, in order to support our customers best, and in general the market, I would say it's really about finding the best possible solution for your project. So in this regards, we have specifically a very strong focus on the pre-sales activity. So the technical and commercial guidance, we closely work together with our customer on that. We have our proprietary system optimization tools in place in order actually to come up with, in the end, a tailored best possible solution for the customers. That said, I say in UK it's dynamic. There's still a lot to learn, I would say. We're very much looking forward to today's discussion. Actually, learn from yourselves, have a fruitful discussion, and see how we can actually help yourself in solving your obstacles that you still see. So please let us know after Jan's bit more technical presentation, I would say, and what Trina is actually offering. What do you think about the market opportunities and obstacles? So thanks a lot.
Okay, next slide. Thanks, Daniel. Yes, we already learned from the video. So Trina, we're offering tailored storage solutions, which are based on a flexible product platform. According to customer requirements, we can, for example, either design and provide containerized industrial solutions or cabinet-based battery solutions, always including state-of-the-art power conversion systems and the complete software and control package, including PCS control, power plant controller, energy management system, SCADA, and so on. And our platform relies on a strong supply chain. So it means we're working only with tier 1 suppliers to guarantee high standards, as heard in the video, in terms of quality, safety, efficiency, and cost. And yeah, for example, in terms of power conversion, we are working close cooperation with major European PCS suppliers. And on the battery side, we have strong partnership with, let's say, the leading Chinese LFP battery supplier. And yeah, additionally, as it's kind of Trina DNA, we very strong focus on vertical integration. Vertical integration is key for Trina. So, and we learned it yesterday, it's released yesterday, that we are currently ramping up our own battery manufacturing in our headquarters in China. And same time, yeah, just to give you a short glimpse on that, we are developing our own integrated cabinet solution, will be released by end of this year. Next slide, please. And yeah, to make a real solution out of it for our customers, we are wrapping our products with a solid and flexible warranty package, which is backed by our suppliers. Herein, we are offering, for example, a product warranty on a component basis, flexible one up to 20 years. And in terms of performance warranty, which consists of a capacity warranty, warranting the energy retention and power availability warranty on the system level, and finally also warranty of the round trip efficiency. All these warranties are, say, at or above industry standards, and we're offering full flexibility for our customers. Next slide, please. And yeah, now having a bit deeper look into the application for utility scale battery storage, and here we are mainly talking about PV plus storage. It's clearly our focus here. So just in general, co-locating solar with storage has a significant advantage over standalone plants, mainly in terms of cost savings, US cost savings. For example, you can save land costs, labor costs, project management costs, permits, interconnection costs, O&M finally. So a lot of saving potentials. And yeah, the market is currently supporting mainly two different setups, AC and DC coupled approach. And yeah, in the AC coupled setup, the battery and the PV, they are individually connected via separate inverters to the grid. This brings indeed some flexibility, but to be honest, limited cost saving or BOS cost saving potential. So on the other hand, the DC coupled solution has, sorry, in the DC coupled solutions, the PV and the battery, they are connected on the same DC bus, connected to the same inverter and the same MV skid, which brings a lot more BOS cost saving potential than the AC coupled solution. And yeah, but on the other hand, a bit more complexity. So the biggest advantage of this approach is that excess PV energy can be directly stored into the battery and thus reducing clipping losses. And this seems coming from the US mainly right now, that the DC coupled approach is kind of go-to solution in the US and probably also in Europe sooner or later. And it enables, let's say, high DC-AC ratios, the ratio between PV and the AC power of 1.5 or even higher, up to 2 or more, like we are seeing currently in the US, 2.5 or 3 even. So this brings a lot of cost-saving potential on this side to make the most of the specific site, and finally out of the available interconnection capacity. And yes, I guess worth to mention that the cost savings are highly project specific, and for example, depends on the irradiation on site, the price peaks to shift energy, for example, site specifics, and finally, the whole business case. And I guess now in the next session, this will be part of our discussion, going a bit deeper, what options, what hurdles we see for co-located DC and also AC coupled configuration. Handing over to Tanushree.
Great. So thank you, Daniel and Jan, for those valuable insights. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. We're now going to bring in different views to the table from the route to market, policy and regulation, investment and technology perspectives. So among our guest speakers, we have Stefan Teit, Head of Energy Storage, BayWa, Chris Morrison, Managing Director, Macquarie, Paul Mason, Director at WeMap, and Molly, who is the Deputy Editor of Energy Storage News. Extend a very warm welcome to all our guests today, and thank you very much for taking the time. I will open the discussion with a question to Stefan, I think, since Jan has created some background to the AC and DC coupled solutions. Stefan, what are the main drivers for co-locating renewables with storage? You know, being from the technology side of the business, what do you see as the main drivers for co-locating storage with renewables?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. And I mean, a few quick points. I guess one quick one was, or big one was mentioned from Jan already in terms of cost savings. That's obviously depending on the project specific location and the market you're in. A main driver for us from the renewable energy developer perspective, as our task is really to provide a vehicle, an SPV, a project which is cost and risk optimized for the investment market. So saving on the power electronic side, on the balance of plant side is definitely an important point for us. And also in terms of grid connections, it's I guess overall in the world an important point, or grid connections get more scarce, but specifically in the UK, we realized that getting grid connections, finding cheap grid connections is becoming more and more difficult. So you want to make the maximum use out of a grid connection. And by having storage and PV on the same grid connection, you basically just can maximize the assets, the value of a certain grid connection. And then another point is also risk mitigation. Looking forward, especially midterm, prices are expected to decline, especially for PV. And with storage, you can basically just mitigate the risk, and you have two assets on the same grid connections, potentially in one SPV, which go together there very well.
Great. So I think cost savings and risk mitigation are two of the important drivers for co-locating renewables with storage. Do you also see some challenges, that is inhibiting growth of solar plus storage in the UK market, specifically from a developer's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity of cost savings, what I mentioned is on the other side as well a challenge from the developer perspective. Like, what's really the optimized configuration for the specific UK market with its rather complex revenue stream setup? Yeah, so do you want to really do it DC coupled? Do you want to AC couple on the low voltage side or on the medium voltage side? Because at the end you want to be creating or developing a park which can access all available revenues in the market, the revenues available today and also those available in the future. So all this metering setup and control setup is definitely quite complex, as I think Daniel already mentioned in the very beginning.
Great, thanks for your inputs there. Next, I'm going to go over to Paul from Remap. And in the same context, Paul, when it comes to modeling of standalone versus storage projects, where do you see the biggest difference between the two models?
Well, I think as has been mentioned, the real difference is around how you use the assets you've got. So obviously with a standalone project, you have a grid connection and you've got full access to that grid connection. So your battery has complete freedom to make them, and full flexibility to make the most of whatever revenue streams are available. As soon as you start to share that grid connection with another asset, your battery is having to use whatever's free on the grid connection at any point in time. So it's about the constraints that exist on that grid connection, and therefore you're balancing the cost savings which have been mentioned versus a loss of income, because you haven't got full access to the revenues. You're looking at a lower income, and trying to balance that and optimize that initial design can be quite challenging.
Yes, agree. I think designing the optimal solution is quite challenging at times. But in terms of the future developments in the UK ancillary market, how do you see it influencing the current business case?
Well, I think what we're seeing is really a trend towards more real-time procurement of ancillary services. So one of the bigger constraints around that grid connection sharing right now is if you're bidding for a service like frequency response a month ahead for a full month, you're having to take quite a conservative view on what might happen with your solar profile. So how much capacity can you commit into that market? You're having to look at what assuming you give solar the full priority, you're having to be really conservative around how much capacity you can commit into frequency response. If you are moving that procurement closer to real time, you've got a lot more certainty around how much you can commit, which will reduce the revenue losses. So right now, if you match the capacity of a battery, so you've got for example, a 20 megawatt solar PV matched with a 20 megawatt battery, that battery will be earning about 15% less revenue than a standalone equivalent. But I think you could bridge that gap considerably by moving procurement closer to real time, and also by taking a more aggressive stance in optimization. So I think the ancillary service evolving the procurement of ancillary services will help in that respect. But I think also evolving attitudes towards how you give priority to the two different assets on the grid connection can evolve to really help the business case as well. So for example, you're looking at say E for block 5, so it's the 3 till 7 p.m. block of time during the winter months, accounts for less than 1% of your solar income. But it's actually a really lucrative time for optimizing battery storage revenue. So you could, if you gave priority to a battery over that period, you lose less than 1% of your solar income, but boost your battery income by circa 10%. So I think the combination of more real-time procurement, along with evolving attitudes towards which assets are getting the priority on the grid connection, will really boost the investability of this. And that's not to say that I think even taking the traditional approach, I think we're very close to these assets looking quite similar to standalone just on the cost savings. So I think we're getting to a point where you could make a co-located project look more attractive by being more aggressive in this way.
Great. I think since you brought in the topic of revenue streams, I think it would be good to bring in the investment perspective onto the table now. So I'm going to move over to Chris and ask him, how is the investor sentiment in the UK market on the solar plus storage?
Yeah, hi Tanushree, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfectly well.
Yeah, great. Okay. Yeah, so well, I think just to take one step back, the investor sentiment in the storage market, I think has certainly improved over the last sort of 6 months plus. You know, post EFR and capacity market changes, there was I think a bit of a quiet spell, to be honest, for investor sentiment in UK battery storage. That has now picked up again, and I think a lot of that has been driven by you know, partly price reductions, partly more greater familiarity as more capacity has come on the system, but also there has been the emergence of certain you know, funding structures and PPA structures that allow a certain proportion of contracted revenue that had disappeared when you lost the capacity market and so those long-term EFR contracts. So certainly, you know, that's been important. In terms of the solar plus storage, I think it's a very early market, and we are in Macquarie through Green Investment Group, where I sit, and also through our subsidiary in Zero Generation, which is a recently set up sort of dedicated solar business. We're looking, you know, very intently at co-located storage. We think it makes a lot of sense for the reasons that have been outlined earlier on the call. I think that we're probably taking, as you might expect, a slightly risk-averse approach to this. We see that the simplest solution is, you know, an AC-coupled solution. It's a little bit more, perhaps technically a little less efficient, but you still get most of the cost savings on the capital side. and effectively, I'll come on to Paul's point in a minute, but effectively, you operate the battery independently from the solar to a degree. So I think there's a big question at the moment in terms of what is the right size to have your solar PV, your battery storage system alongside your solar PV asset. If as Paul mentions, if you same size the battery to the grid connection for the solar, you are losing a proportion of your revenues. So how much of your revenue loss can you bear to take on the battery on the assumption that the solar will always be the lead export on the battery? And Paul makes some very good points around timing and optimizing that. And I think that given there's still a certain amount of uncertainty in the long-term revenue streams as it is, I think we're taking a slightly conservative approach in terms of allowing full freedom for the battery, as much freedom as possible for the battery to gain those revenue streams. So I said that was quite a long answer to battery sentiment is certainly improving for battery storage. The sentiment is certainly improving for battery storage on its own, and we're looking at this in some ways as a sort of standalone battery connected through the same substation, and then looking at how we can potentially enhance the value of the solar PPA or of the battery storage asset through that, and that may be by So I think that's the big question. I think it's probably an open question for me as to what the right size of a battery is, which hasn't been sort of determined yet.
Yeah, I think this would be the right point to also ask you that, what are the challenges from an investment perspective of the revenue streams being mainly merchant-based compared to a PPA-based system, since you just pointed out? I think it's not that bad, actually. I mean, I think it makes it more challenging, and there's obviously a lot less. There has been less activity in storage than there has in solar. But I think we see solar as a really good diversification asset for anyone holding renewables. It's much more dependent it's dependent on the spreads of power prices, not on the actual level of power prices. And increasingly, solar systems and wind systems are increasingly exposed to merchant power price risk, either after the PPA or even a proportion up front. And given the sort of collapse we've seen in merchant prices in the front 2 years with COVID, I think investors have been not spooked, but they've been suddenly made aware of their exposure to merchant prices and the merchant price curve. Seeing, we believe there's a very strong case to be made for, in a way, less risk from battery storage, given the fact that you're actually exposed to price spreads, which have remained fairly stable over that period. So I think there's probably still some education there to be done. It certainly some of that education has happened over the last sort of 6 to 18 months. And obviously nothing's as good as having a fully contracted revenue stream for 15 years. But at the same time, I think the situation is certainly improving, and people are getting more comfortable with that. And any contracted element we can bring, whether it's through a price floor, capacity market, any other long-term revenue we can bring in there, obviously enhances the investability. Super. I think it's great to know that the investor sentiment is positive, and yeah, there are still some challenges existing, but hopefully we can go over them. And yeah, so moving on to the policy side, and over to Molly, since we're on the revenue topic. Molly, revenue stacking is now possible for bidders in dynamic containment and balancing mechanisms. How do you think this is going to change the regulatory environment?
I think at the moment, with it only having been allowed for the past month, it's reasonably early on, so it's slightly hard to tell exactly how it's going to change. There certainly seems to be a huge amount of appetite for the ability to stack the revenue streams. But at the moment, dynamic containment is still reasonably significantly undersubscribed. So I think there needs to be kind of an uptick in capacity before we'll see a really significant shift in the regulatory environment. But we will definitely start to see more people in the battery sector pushing for a greater leeway within the regulatory environment to allow more stacking so that they can access as many revenue streams as possible so they can really capitalize on the asset that they've got.
Great, thanks, Molly. So just to kind of provide, let's say, a summary to the whole discussion, I'm going to go across and around the table to get answers to this one question, which is, if you could pick one aspect that can make solar plus storage really take off in the UK, what would that be? So, Molly, do you want to take a shot at that question first?
Sure. I think there still needs to be more work around grid constraints and the ease of access to market for solar storage and co-located projects in order to really make it take off.
Great. Can we have Paul's views on that, please?
Yeah, I think it probably comes down to the route to market providers and taking that holistic view on what a PPA for solar looks like alongside the ability to monetize storage. And I think we've really seen the storage side of things evolve with, as Chris was saying, sort of more reasonable levels of floor income, and the pricing on the optimization agreements has really become very competitive. And if you combine that, what you see on the solar PPA side, and put it together in a single package, I think that could really help to unlock the investor, the investment into the space. So I think it can answer a lot of the questions that remain on the investment side.
Great. Thank you. Stefan, would you like to go next?
Yeah, Paul actually mentioned some valuable points which I had in mind as well. But I guess another important one, as I kind of outlined earlier, is really, from the developer perspective. Okay, what's the investment market's preference? Is it more like what Chris has been saying, maybe going the AC coupled version, having more two separate systems with a dedicated PPA, sorry, long-term revenue secured, maybe even directly with one of the large corporates for the PV, and then the battery using the rest of the capacity, or is the market happy and confident already with a more integrated, more technology-wise merged approach? I guess yeah, time and the first systems which will be on the market and experience will tell.
Great. And Chris, I guess you're up next and last to answer this.
Yeah, and well, I guess based on my sort of slightly conservative model, in a way, I'm not sure there's really a sort of a single wish that I would say to increase the investability, because we think that there are some wrinkles to iron out in terms of the development and the structuring of the projects. But by and large, there's nothing that is stopping it, I think, at the moment. And I think to support on Stefan's point, it would be great if we could see a bit more work done, and we're looking at this ourselves actually with our PPA team, about how we can combine storage and solar PPAs and enhance the value for both assets. And we are starting to see corporate demand. You'll have seen, quite a few big names in the market, corporate demand for 24/7 clean electricity matched to consumption. We're not going to get there with a co-located asset, but certainly, can we get closer to that end game with a co-located asset and the PPAs that are provided? So maybe a bit more evolution on PPA structuring on those co-located sites. Maybe that's something we're looking at. Certainly, I think that's something that could increase the investability.
I think that's a very good view on that question. I think we might be having some questions from the audience as well. Lucy, could you please help me here?
Yes, sorry, I was just having some problems with my audio. So yeah, we've got a question from Mark Patson, I think, about what does everybody think about bypassing the grid and using mobile battery to deliver to local customers in order to take the strain off the grid?
Anybody from the panelists who would like to take the question?
Yeah, I can have a quick comment on that. Yeah, it's a great idea, but I think so far it's probably not cost competitive. Yeah, like the simple cost of a battery for storing, so the cost of one cycle basically, which represents then the kilowatt hour, and then even the transport to the local customers. My guess with today's pricing and costs, that's not a competitive approach, but might be in a more holistic view in a midterm future, a piece of the puzzle maybe.
Maybe can we comment on that also?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and maybe a quick comment from my side. Thanks, Stefan, and mainly sharing your point here. So I guess it's not yet the time for mobile batteries. Also in terms of we're facing challenges there with warranties, safety issues during dismantling. So I guess the idea is interesting, great. Just driving your battery to the customer with changing business cases, but simply it's not yet ready from my point of view.
Let me probably also, yeah, please.
We do have some time, I think.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Chris,
we have some time left.
First.
Yeah.
So Chris, you go first.
I was just going to say, actually, I mean, I think I agree with the previous panelists' points. Where we are sort of seeing, I think it's good to say a crunch in terms of supply or from demand customers is on EV, and if we start to get EV concentrations in areas, or demand for EV concentration in areas where there's a poor grid. You're already seeing some models where you're seeing sort of battery-powered charge points, and portable chargers are already a thing. That's perhaps a niche application, but we might see more of that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is potentially there's a niche for that, but I think to basically stabilize our whole grid and also then the homes by that is far away off, I would say. Maybe in the very, very far future. See that I think the closer that comes to it, there is an idea of using electric vehicles to provide some certain services actually to the grid, but that's also something where you need a very, very critical mass actually in the system to have a stable supply from these.
Great.
We did have one more question. Do you want me to take that, Tanushree? And
yeah, please go ahead.
Find out who wants to take it. So the question is, roughly what proportion of the investment case for batteries plus solar is in the ability to accurately forecast and dispatch? So I don't know who wanted to take that one first.
Yeah, I can take a shot at it. It's clearly the ability to know what capacity is on your grid connection and what's available for the battery to use is pretty key in delivering this. But as I said earlier, there's different ways of approaching it. So in the simplest way, you would say let the battery participate purely in the balancing mechanism, for example. So at that point, you're forecasting your solar dispatch an hour in advance, and you can apply a little bit of conservatism to what that might look like, and you can have reasonably good certainty around that. It's obviously much more difficult if you're looking to play on day ahead and intraday markets and re-optimize in that way. But there's a business case which gives a reasonable level of income just looking at the balancing mechanism. Layering on top of that other services like frequency response, even with the current month ahead procurement model, again, you can take a view on the probability of various solar outputs at various times of the day, and overnight you're very confident there's no solar output, so you can feel free to bid into the overnight frequency response market. But even in the evening periods, you also can have varying degrees of confidence about what that solar output would look like. So you can be reasonably comfortable with the way that you're bidding into these markets, and taking that into account. As I said earlier, the returns are looking similar once you take into account the cost savings. to a standalone storage model. So it's not a dissimilar return profile.
Thanks, Paul. I think we're getting some audience questions on retrofitting an existing standalone or a solar project with storage, and there is discussion going on around that. So, do we have some views from the panelists on this particular topic?
Probably, I think the first part we can take. It's either Jan or myself in terms of the challenges for retrofitting. I think that's quite technical. So maybe Jan, you want to start with that one. Or should I, Kate?
I don't know exactly what point you have in mind, but I mean, retrofitting, I mean, it's always a wish, right? It's in PV, also retrofitting or battery, same topic. So it brings challenges from a technical point of view, of course. And finally also—
But the question is, what exactly are those challenges?
Maybe having— Yeah, maybe then you go first when you think about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the question comes actually from existing standalone storage, because typically we're being asked the other question, right? It's the other way around. So you have an existing PV plan, and what do you need to do actually to add storage to it, right? I think just to come to that question probably first, because it's a more common case, I think the main thing here is you're reducing options, because typically going to a DC coupled system then doesn't make too much sense. So you would rather look into an AC coupled solution after, and then it comes mainly to the setup actually on the feeder. So if it's what kind of substation do we have, and how do we can best integrate the battery there? It's very similar the other way around. So typically, if you have a standalone battery in place, actually, it has been designed for being a standalone project. So it's not designed for being DC coupled. So then typically retrofitting that is a bit tricky. So you need to look into the PCS, whether you change that. Obviously, there are options to do that. Whether that makes financially sense is a good question, I would say. So typically, I would see then you're most likely looking into a setup where you use simply the same grid connection and then add another AC coupled system to that. I think that's my first take on that.
Maybe if I can, an aspect from the developer perspective. So if you want to add PV to an existing standalone storage system, I guess the biggest challenge is to find land. Obviously, PV needs much more land than storage. If you have land, I think then to have like an AC coupled system there being added, I think that's not too complicated, because you don't necessarily need to modify much on the grid side of things. You have import and export already there. The other way around, which is usually more popular to be looked at. So you have an operational PV system. That's something we're also looking at. And adding storage there is that you need import capacity. Yeah, so that's really the first thing you need to do. Looking at the grid connection, discussing with the grid operator whether you get import capacity, and that can be quite a challenge.
So it's rather regulatory issue than a technical challenge, right? So
or a grid topic. I mean, I guess Ofgem has provided some clarity there in terms of adding storage to ROC PV sites. So I think that's not even too complex to handle, or it's manageable. But it's really the grid operator. And you might think, if you have like 50 megawatt export for a 50 megawatt or 60 megawatt peak PV plant, that you should be able to get the same import easily, but that's actually or definitely not the case. They need to calculate basically the grid or do the grid design studies there again.
Great, we have a lot of questions coming in actually from the audiences, but we have 2 minutes left. So Jan, were you going to say something?
Just sorry, Tanushree, we can run over, so we can take some more questions, and we can go over slightly the allotted time.
Okay, since we're on the topic,
I was just going to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to pick up the point that I'd raised about lenders comfortable with retrofitting. If you want the next question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Great. So I think that I agree with the point that if you were to retrofit an AC coupled system, as Stefan points out, you've got some grid constraints potentially there. It's an engineering, probably okay from an engineering perspective. You have to think about how you split up ownership of, you have to have a shared grid connection agreement. I think essentially you have to fund the battery storage separately from the solar, in my view. Then maybe that's not absolutely required, but I would say that's probably likely. And then as such, you would need to have sort of separate land agreements. You need to have a sharing of the grid connection. And you'd need to ensure, obviously, that the battery wasn't restricting the export of the solar. So that would be on the sort of the basic, simplest way to do it from an investment perspective. It's effectively carve the two apart. Anything more, and I think we get quite complicated with the existing solar funding.
I think that also answers the questions on how can one get the lenders to be confident about, replicating on existing solar sites. So thank you for that. So I have one more question. I think Calvin Wong has sent it to all the panelists. What does the panel think, I think, on peer-to-peer energy trading, encouraging the growth of energy storage and bringing the source closer to the demand?
I think it's I think it's a really exciting sort of development, which would allow the value of individual assets to be captured within the market in a way that is currently not really available. So currently, the location, for example, is only valued really by National Grid through the balancing mechanism. It's not valued through the wholesale market. So I think anything that gives assets an ability to have their individual characteristics valued more appropriately is a positive thing. As to whether when or whether we'll see it in a meaningful way, I'm not sure. I think there's a lot. I don't see any reason we won't get there over time, but I think we're a long way off right now.
Great, thanks, Paul. Lucy, shall we take one more question, or I think we should close? And we're happy to answer further questions on the virtual stand, or you can reach out to us through our email IDs. So yeah, we would like to thank all of our guest speakers. Thank you so much for taking the time and participating in this panel discussion. It's been lovely, and it's been quite interesting as well for us. So thank you very much, and thanks to the audience as well, and Solar Media for letting us do this discussion.
Great. Thank you, Tanushree. Yeah, just like to echo her sentiment. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating, particularly the guest panelists. Hope that the discussion has been fruitful for everybody, and we have a couple more workshops. So if anyone is interested, then get in touch with me. And until then, I just suggest you enjoy the rest of the event, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good